Thank you for registering for the Texas Peer Specialist Basics Information Session with One World Recovery Network. This training was designed because we too are familiar with a lot of the challenges one might face when entering into the peer workforce. One World Recovery Network believes in supporting individuals in reaching their highest potential. We envision a healthy and sustainable peer workforce in Texas, and this starts with individuals like yourself. This presentation is open to the entire community, so inviting others to register is encouraged. And our goal is really to open up more knowledge around peer support in Texas. So my name is Craig Anderson. I'm a peer specialist supervisor and instructor on both the substance use as well as the mental health side of peer support. So let me share with you some exciting things that we're doing here at One World Recovery Network that aligns with supporting peer specialist workforce in Texas. So we're focused on a few different areas. We provide interactive, engaging trainings, including ethics, MHPS, RSPS, CEUs, etc. I'll explain those acronyms here in just a few minutes. We provide peer supervision. We provide mentorship for new and existing peer specialists, as well as peer specialist supervisors. We serve as a work site for new peer specialists to obtain certification hours, and this is available in person as well as virtually. We provide workforce development and sustainability of the peer role. And lastly, we also offer consulting with peer-run organizations. So today's presentation is around 30 minutes, and we're going to be covering really three big areas. We're going to start with an explanation of what recovery is, how this role began, how it evolved, and lastly, the certification for the state of Texas. At the end of the presentation, there will be contact information to answer any of your questions that you may have, as well as links to register for future peer specialist trainings. All right, recovery. So now I'm just going to go over a brief explanation of really what recovery means. So this definition of recovery comes to us from SAMHSA. SAMHSA is a government agency. It stands for Substance Use and Mental Health Services Administration. And they define recovery as this: a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. Do any parts of this definition jump out to you? The part I really like is to strive to reach my full potential. It's saying to me that even if I've resolved some of my earlier struggles, say with substances, I'm always working to be a better version of myself. And I think that many of us can identify with that idea. So what is peer support? So the idea is that it's a process of giving encouragement or assistance to overcome challenge in life by someone else who has lived experience. So us peer workers are people who have experienced the challenges themselves, we've worked through them, and we are giving back to others. So what we offer is emotional support. We share knowledge. We teach skills. We could provide practical assistance and connect people with resources, opportunities, and other communities of support. Notice here I said peer workers. So in this role, we have many titles that are pretty much used interchangeably. So you might have also heard peer support specialist, recovery coach, recovery navigator. There's a lot of different ways of saying the same thing. They're all correct. And there's a lot of other titles out there, but I seem to favor recovery coach for myself. So while peer support can vary in its look from agency to agency, the underlying theme of connecting people with beneficial supports in their community, and especially resources, this can't be underestimated. So on your own personal recovery journey, what connections and resources did you find most helpful? Or maybe more importantly, What was lacking in the community? That if you had that in your life, it could have propelled you on your recovery journey faster. All right, let's take a step back. Let's take a look at the role of a peer specialist. How far back in history do you believe this concept goes? 10 years, 50 years? How about all the way back to the late 1700s? So there was a gentleman by the name of Jean-Baptiste Poussin who had been hiring recovered patients to support others who were inpatient at a mental facility, mental health hospital, psychiatric hospital. Now, how did he know that this strategy would be beneficial? Because he was once a patient at that very same hospital. His supervisor, Philippe Peniel, had been watching the development of using peers as staff. And his big takeaway from that was that they treated the patients with a more gentle and in a more humane way. Why? Because they had been in the same shoes before. They knew the abuses that the existing system could cause. So the idea of using peers to support others have been written about because of this first case study. And there was interest in other countries, such as in England and the US, but it was never really fully adopted until more modern times. So the concept of peer support in mental health has its roots in a self-help movement, and this began in about the 1970s. This was a time of intense focus on civil rights, social change. A lot of people who had survived the abuses of psychiatric hospitals, they came together to support each other and work towards healing. So that was focused more on the mental health side of things. But what about on the substance use side? So in the late 1800s, there was a Dr. Mackenzie. He was running a hospital for those afflicted with alcoholism and utilized other recovered alcoholics to support the patient. He noted that they had a deeper understanding on how the disease affects people, and they were able to talk on their level as a peer to a peer, which formed a stronger bond versus the traditional doctor-patient relationship. Okay, so let's fast forward to some more recent events. The vast majority of Texas counties have been designated as mental health professional shortage areas because there's just not simply enough providers to serve every resident in need, of mental health or substance use treatment. It's leaving a lot of the most vulnerable without access to care. So one way to close up this gap is for the system to provide more opportunities for peer support specialists to enter the workforce. So slowly, more and more traditional like mental health and substance use settings are including peer support as part of the treatment environment. Today, peer specialists can be found in hospitals, treatment settings, methadone clinics, recovery community organizations or RCOs, and the list just goes on and on. So 2017, House Bill 1486. This enabled the creation of a new Medicaid peer services benefit. So now organizations were able to bill Medicaid for some of the peer services that are being offered to their clients or their peers. It really defined what the training looks like, especially the certification process for both substance use and mental health peer workers. And it defined the scope of services peer specialists can provide, which includes assisting individuals experiencing mental health or substance use disorders, by supporting the individuals, focusing on recovery, especially wellness, self-direction, responsibility, independent living. So now peer support existed prior to this bill passing, But what had changed was now the organization can bill Medicaid for services that the peer specialist provided. And in some ways, it really helped legitimize the role as a peer specialist to one that was more professional. All right, so now let's take a look at the steps involved in order to become certified in the state of Texas as a peer specialist. So to begin with, there are more than one certification that you can earn. So if you identify with having lived experience with substance use, there is the RSPS, Recovery Support Peer Specialist. Mental health, there's the MHPS, Mental Health Peer Specialist. And lastly, what about if you have experience with incarceration? There's the JIRPS. Notice that last one I just mentioned. It's not Medicaid billable. Checks off a lot of the boxes, but not that one. What if, like me, you can identify with more than one? Or what about all three? You can earn certifications in all, but for the focus of this training, we're going to start with one so you can understand the process. So if you look at the last section on this slide, you'll notice something that says IC and RC reciprocacy. So that this is the ability to utilize your certification in other states. Now, not every state, but on many other states, you can transfer your certification if, say, you move or you decide that you're living 6 months in another area. You may have also noticed that none of these certs are IC and RC eligible, which brings us to the next one. The PRSS, Peer Recovery Support Specialist. So while this one is not Medicaid billable, it can be utilized in other jurisdictions. Also notice that you'll need to already hold either an RSPS or MHPS prior to applying for the certification. And it also differs from some of the other certifications in that you will be sitting for an exam at a testing facility, whereas the other ones utilize what we call a knowledge assessment that's completed on the last day of class. So they look quite a bit different. Hopefully, you have a much clearer understanding of the different certifications that you can earn. So now let's look at how do we begin this process. And I have a slide that I'll be discussing each one, but just a quick little snapshot of this. You're going to do a self-assessment. A lot of the same information I've shared with you today, you're going to go online and you're going to read about the role of a peer specialist. And then you're going to sign an attestation. Then you're going to move on to core training. So this is like a 6-hour training. Some organizations offer it on the weekends to fit into your schedule. At the end, there's a knowledge assessment. Okay, you've passed that, you move on, and you choose which either track you want. Is it MHPS? Is it RSPS? And you take a week-long training, and again, a knowledge assessment. Then you apply for your initial certification. During that period, you will be supervised for 250 hours in the role as a peer specialist. And at the conclusion of that, you're going to apply for your 2-year certification. All right, so step one, what does this look like? So this slide is showing the website for the Health and Human Services, HHS. On here, again, they're just going to do an explanation of what this role looks like and some other information. After you've read down through all of it, at the very bottom, there is an attestation. And this was a word new to me years ago. It just means that I attest. I swear that I've read through this and understand it. You will need that attestation for the second step, which is the core training. So again, this is a 6-hour training, and you can apply for this training at any training entity in the state of Texas. My organization, One World Recovery, does offer the training. You can find a list of training entities at the Texas Certification Board website or on PeerForce, which might be where you found this training to start with. All right, so you take the core training, you take the knowledge assessment, you need to score a 70 or higher to be able to pass it. The questions are not set up to be tricky. That's not the idea behind it. It's just like, how much knowledge have you gained, during this particular class? Okay, you pass the knowledge assessment, and now you're on to step 3. This is where you're going to sign up for either the RSPS or the MHPS. These are typically a 46-hour class, so we're talking about an entire week. At the conclusion of that, again, the knowledge assessment, 70%. If you don't pass it the first time, you can take it again. All right, so step 3, you've taken the class, you've passed the knowledge assessment. On to step 4. This is where you get to contact this Texas State Certification Board. So this is a snapshot of their website. If you notice on the left in the blue box, there says certification. You would click on that, you'd go down to the certification that you had just taken a class on, and it walks you through a process. It's going to send you to another website called Certimi, and you're going to set up an account with Certimi. And Certimi is just a collection, it's a place where you can collect all your certifications. It also allows the Texas State Certification Board to look at them. So when you're going through the process, they have access to them so they can approve the next step. All right, so you've set all that up with Certimi and the Texas State Certification Board. This is when you would find a work site. These could be volunteer hours, they could be actually paid hours, but you need to be working under a peer specialist supervisor. Not every organization has those, but again, One World Recovery does offer that if you're working at a site that does not have a supervisor. And we would coordinate with whoever is in charge to make sure what you are doing there is actually peer services, that you're being utilized as a recovery coach. So if you're able to work full-time, these 250 hours, you will accomplish them pretty quick. All right, so you finally have that. At the conclusion, the peer specialist supervisor, either my organization or maybe the one that you're working for, will give you a letter that says that you've completed these hours and that we recommend you, to be a peer specialist in the state of Texas. Then you turn around and you would go back to the Texas Certification Board and you would upload that letter so that you can complete the process. So this says you're applying for your 2-year certification. Well, you've already had a 6-month initial certification. So what the second part really is, it's a 1.5 years. So altogether, it's a 2-year certification. Every 2 years, you get to reapply. And during that 2-year period, you need to start collecting CEUs, Certified Education Units. And these could be 1-hour lunchtime kind of discussions. They could just be refresher courses about different peer specialist duties. Typically, ethics is spoken about quite a bit during these. But you need 20 CEUs in that 2-year period. And I promise they're not that hard to collect. Most of them are free of charge. A lot of organizations offer them. My organization offers them. So you'd be surprised how fast that they can actually add up. So as promised, jumped ahead a little bit. This is pretty important. You're going to be reading about this on the HHS website. But in order to qualify for this role, you got to be at least 18 years old. You have to have lived experience with either mental health or substance use or both. They want you to have a high school diploma or a GED. And you must be willing to appropriately share your recovery story. Then you need to be able to demonstrate self-directed recovery. And this is something that it could be just beyond, like, say, working the 12 step. What do you do for your own wellness? Because we can't give to others what we don't have in ourselves. We can't, like, pour from an empty glass. You also need to pass a criminal background history or registry checks. So on the HHS website and the State Certification Board, they list what these are. There's only a few that would actually exclude you from this role. Some have a time requirement. It has to be 5 years, say, since this offense. And this is an area that worries a lot of people. A lot of us that work in this field, we have a criminal history. That's kind of and that's part of our story. So check that out to make sure that you do qualify. All right, this is the last slide. As promised, here are links to the different websites I spoke about. Their Texas Certification Board is on there. It says TCBAP. They changed their name. It's really just TCB, but when you type it in, you may see that come up. So don't think it's taking you somewhere else. The Health and Human Services, remember that's step 1. I work for One World Recovery Network. Any questions, any concerns, just send us an email. We'll get back to you, usually within 24 hours. And Peer Force, which again, I suspect you've already discovered them, but if not, check them out. They have a calendar. They show you all the different organizations that are offering trainings. And lastly, again, my name's Craig Anderson. I have my RSPS, MHPS, and Peer Specialist Supervisor. There again is the email address, and you can give us a call as well. So again, I appreciate you coming to the training today. Share this with other people. And if you need to watch this again, you're more than welcome. All right, everyone have an awesome day.